going to do the second in the Invasion 1066, and I don't think the third one's been made yet, which would be the, I can't remember it, but the battle before Stamford Bridge, where some of the Saxons were wiped out. This is going to be Hastings. I played Berg's Hastings 1066 already on video. I don't think I've played any other Hastings. I'm not sure I have another Hastings scenario. But for this particular one, because we know more about this battle than about Stamford Bridge in particular, there's a little bit more exclusive rules to try to cover some of the events in it. And we'll take a look at those pretty quickly. So the historical scenario starts on turn 3. These scenarios run out 12 turns. I haven't set up the board yet. Still haven't decided which scenario I'm playing. The Normans can't move their cav on turns 3 and 4 of the historical scenario, but they can in any other condition. Harold is going to start stacked with a housecarl unit, which he can't leave. This is like his royal guard or whatever, until they're eliminated. Once they're eliminated, if he survives, then he's allowed to move around as he likes. Saxons are allowed to throw some missiles. Once during a Saxon defensive missile phase, the Saxon can select 2 enemy units in zone of control of 2 friendly ordered non-archers, and then they'll be attacked using a special hand missiles table, which I don't know what it's like. There it is. It's a little bit more potent than the archers, but it's only at range 1. And there's a couple of counters to mark the 2 units that you're doing this with when you do it. Just as reminders, I guess. I don't know. Okay, once per game, the Normans are able to declare the turn a lull turn, and then you replace the normal sequence of play in the game with a special lull turn. Going with the following. First, all the Norman units can pull back up to 2 hexes, retaining their facing. They are not, if they move from one zone of control to another, they still have to stop. Actually, yeah. The Morass Brook hex sides still cause, the terrain still has its same effects that it normally would, is basically all they're saying. And routing units don't get a bonus from this. They'll still keep running as hard as they were running. Then the Saxon player is allowed to move any of his units that aren't in an enemy zone of control 1 hex in any direction and change facing. Routing units, again, all route as normal. Then you get a special reorganization phase where the disordered units will reorganize a little bit more effectively than otherwise. But you can only test if you're not in a zone of control. Yeah, that's nothing special. Routing units can't attempt to recover except under Bishop Odo's special rules. And the Norman archers that are out of arrows come back into play and are placed adjacent to friendly units of the same nationality, given facing they like. And then we go on to the next turn. Morale for this game, the Saxons use the same kind of morale rules that they used in Stamford Bridge, which is we've got the housecarls divided from the Great Fyrd, and there's 2 separate armies. Now I know a little bit more about how these morale rules work, so we'll see a little bit maybe brighter play by me. For the Normans, we have 3 separate armies, each of which is basically divided, each of which includes cav, infantry, infantrymen at arms, and archers. You've got Normans, Bretons, and Franco-Flemish. Now, if the Normans rout, there's a possibility that the Fyrd is going to have to do an impetuous pursuit. Yeah. Missile-capable units can't move into the Morass or Brook spaces unless they're routing. And normal units, when they move into them, all be disordered if they're not missile, and they cease moving. We got some slopes here, which give a defensive bonus, but also they prevent cav from charging across them or into them. And the road doesn't have an effect. For the leaders, William and Harold, if they die, the game is over, but not immediately. You finish off that combat round, which may mean, if you kill the other guy's leader during your round, you may not want to make the attack with your own king. Okay, so for the Normans, Eustace is limited to these orange pieces, which are the Franco-Flemish, and Fargant is limited to commanding the Bretons. Combat units stacked with William or Harold will never become routed. Ooh. There's a papal banner piece. That moves along with initially a Norman cav unit, and it can't be dropped. If that unit, when it fights, either attacking or defending, no, just attacking, it gets 2 dice for attack and gets to choose whichever one it wants to use, which is going to be the higher one, I would assume. Unless the combat tables change significantly. If that unit is forced to rout or is eliminated, it'll drop the banner, at which point a Saxon could capture it, which they will if they rout. Well, no, if they destroy the unit. And it won't help the Saxons. It can be recaptured by the same manner, and then it'll help the new Norman unit, I guess. I'm not sure if it helps. It doesn't state here whether it would help a non-cav unit. I think, whoa, bird's doing interesting stuff. Odo. Odo runs around like a leader, but he doesn't work like a leader. Instead, what he can do is, once per game, he can change 2 routing units without any roll to recover automatically. Now, if this is anything like the Stamford Bridge game, it was really hard to stop routing units. They tended to rout during your opponent's attack phase. They tended to run and end up off the board during your own turn, because they route 4 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 4 more before you get any chance to rally them. So unless we're actually fighting deep on Senlac Hill, in the case of the Normans, or the Saxons have come charging way down, routed units are pretty much things you can just write off. Okay, now here we come to the weird stuff. Feint Attack. Too many rules for something that doesn't do much. Once per game turn, any one ordered Norman cav unit can attempt to perform a Feint Attack. This is basically going to be a feint charge, so it can't go through any terrain that it wouldn't be able to charge through. It has to start at least 2 hexes away, and it moves to make contact. You declare a Feint Attack immediately, and it's treated just like a charge. What it doesn't say is when you do this, but basically you roll, I don't know if it's during combat or post-combat, you roll on this table, or not post-combat, but instead of combat, or if it's done during movement. You roll on this table and you get an effect off of that. I'm really not sure when it should happen. No, it happens during movement, I guess. The feigning unit can still participate in the following combat phase. Okay. They say it was it's questionable whether it was actually used. There's some indication of it. If it's successful, the cav does not advance into the vacated hex, and any elimination it causes doesn't trigger a morale check. The troops just get absorbed by aliens. If there's no effect, the cav jumps back to the hex they originally occupied, facing of the owning player's choice. There's going to be some reinforcements. The Saxons get 4 reinforcements during play. They're going to be randomly timed, 2 dice for each reinforcement, and placed on that turn space. And they have full movement point. If they come in during a lull turn, they're delayed by a turn. If their entry is blocked, they go to the nearest hex that's not blocked. Okay, the Impetuous Saxons. When the Normans rout, the Saxon Fyrd may break rank and pursue them. Whenever a Norman unit routs, the Saxon player has to test. On a 1, 2, or 3, the Saxons don't pursue, but on a 4, 5, or 6, all the Fyrd units, including any disordered units, that had the routed Norman unit in their zone of control at the moment of rout, immediately attempt to pursue them, following their trail. Their allowance is increased to 4 movement points to allow them to chase the routers, and they ignore the requirement to stop if entering an enemy zone of control. This is a big negative, by the way. In no way is this good, and in some cases it was seen that this pursuit, the first time the Saxon Fyrd, well, the Saxons came charging off the hill, was kind of a good thing. The second time it kind of busted them up. I haven't read the historical notes for this one, but whatever. Once each Impetuous Saxon has moved as far as possible, it should adjust its front facing towards a routing enemy. If it can't do this, then it should face any other Norman unit of its choice if one exists in an adjacent hex. All the Impetuous Saxons immediately attack the enemy. Preferably as many of the routing units as possible should be attacked. Each Impetuous Saxon gets a +1 combat modifier to add to its combat value for this attack. This is not a good thing again. The routing units probably are dead. These attacks will not generate further morale checks, but they do count as lost units for the tests. And this will interrupt the normal sequence of play, and then we go back to the combats. Units that made an impetuous pursuit will all be disordered once all the pursuit attacks have been made. Victory conditions. Obviously, if William or Harold dies, it's over. But otherwise, you count up points. The Normans have to win by 10. Otherwise, the Saxons win. And you got, what, 3 points for housecarls, 2 for Fyrd. 12 to the Normans if they hold the high ground beyond the 1200s. That's beyond here, so they pretty much have to break the position completely, more or less. Saxons get 2 for archers or infantry, 4 for Norman cavalry, 15 if they occupy the low ground hexes between 2106 and 2103. That's going to be this. And I got to remember, if I'm chasing them that far, there's probably a good chance that it doesn't really make a difference. And 5 points for the Papal Banner. And leaders are worth 5 points each, and 1 point for any routing unit at the end of the game. A little look at the scenarios. There aren't a lot of options in this. It's just 3 different scenario choices. The first one's the historical. And we got the setup here. Which is going to start on turn 3. I think I'll do the historical, but slightly longer, is started a little earlier. As the Normans are coming onto the field, and William can deploy his force a little differently, Harold has the opportunity to advance onto the valley floor, causing problems with the wet ground. Again, I see that as too different from the battle to really just say, yeah, let's just do that. And the advantage of that is the Normans no longer get their 10-point, the Saxons no longer get their 10-point victory point bonus, basically. And then the third scenario, the Saxons set up as in scenario 1, but they can't leave before, they can't leave the hill. They stay stuck in their setup location, but the Normans are able to move. Some of their units haven't shown up on the board yet, though. And all kind of rules about that. No, this is the second still. I'm sorry. The Normans aren't on the board yet, and they get to enter on the second one. And the third, it works the same as the second, except the Saxons can't come on the board. Okay, enough on that. I'm going to set up the historical, and we'll start that. glance at the setup, and it's a little odd, actually. Densely packed Saxons on the hill. That can be dangerous. If you have routes, you might not have room to retreat. And there's nothing, you know, no special shield wall or anything, just that 5 strength point plus the 1 for the height advantage. I believe that's here. Maybe not. Yeah, on a slope attack from a clearer morass, yeah. Okay. Just making sure that's still there. But William has his archers up front, followed by his infantry, followed by his cav, which can't move right away. So having the archers exposed out there, wow, that's kind of interesting. They're just kind of asking to die. But again, you know, this is the interpretation. I'm going to take a look at the historical notes and the designer notes before I actually start to make sure that I kind of understand some of the purposes here, because I'm a little confused by some of the facets of the setup. In particular, the decision to just throw the archers in front. I know they did advance first, but they're right up on the edge, not like 2 hexes back where they'd be able to be almost, you know, they're just as effective out at 2 hexes as they are at 1. So Norman axe. Only the Normans run out of arrows, and only on a 1 or a 2, not just a 1. So we've got slightly different out of ammo rules in this one. Okay. I didn't find anything too astounding in the designer notes or history. Certainly the designer's opinion that this was more or less the attack position that was used. Fired off some archers, and you can see the higher run out of arrows rate in this one is kind of a big deal. This particular setup means that I'm going to have to use the interpenetration rolls to get a couple of bashes in and try to break up that Saxon line a little bit. By shifting the line over to the left a little bit, I'm able to get plenty of attacks that are going to come in. I haven't launched those yet. Again, these are all going to be at -2, which is not pleasant on this system. And before I do anything, there's the question of whether or not I want to throw those arrows or those axes yet. Personally, I think I would rather wait and use this later and not the first attack. It doesn't require it to be on the first attack, although honestly, you kind of think it would be. Because I feel like my defensive line is very, very strong right now, so I don't want to use my limited one-shot missile hit to try to break up this attack. I think I'll wait until maybe the cav are hitting, which are a little bit less weak. I forgot to flip my archers over. This guy may have moved a space too much. I think he should only be able to have gotten there. Not surprisingly, the Huskarls hold. That infantry was not able to get the edge. I wasn't able to destroy any of the Saxon units, but I was able to destroy quite a few of the Normans. And this is kind of the problem, is you're facing a pretty damn tough defensive line there. And it's the only way that you can kind of break it is to get a disorder, which I got a fair number of, and then get an elimination afterwards. The elimination, this guy's 4, he's attacking strength 3, but he's got a -1 going up the slope, so he ends up at a 0. On a 6 he could win. Nobody did win. So I didn't get any edge. I didn't make my way up on the hill at all. Making your way up on the hill isn't a guarantee. You could still get pushed back. That's going to put it over onto the Saxon side. Well, do I have any recoveries? No, I do not. And remember, it's tough for the Saxons to recover too. They've got this dense line here. I'm going to have to start pulling some units back because I don't have the maneuverability to exchange units and give them the chance to refresh the way the setup initially is. I would not set the Saxons up this way if I had an option. To pull most of the disordered units off the line. This one here was very difficult. I didn't have an easy way to get him reinforced because they shifted the weight over to my right flank over there. I don't want to try to get Harold into the battle. Yeah, he's got a good unit and he's strong and everything, but losing leaders tends to be a bad thing. I'm able to move this fella so that he could improve the rallying chances, and I could actually shift Harold up here to improve my rallying chances there. All the Norman archers have already fired, so they don't get to, I forgot to flip them over, but I did it now. They don't get a defensive fire phase. Let me just think over here. Is there something I want to do there? There might be. If I do a little dance here, I can get an archer there and help anchor this line into place a little better. And my naive play has gotten me in a lot of trouble. The Norman line has just vaporized, basically. Some of those were routing units because I had a solid line behind them that I could not move the cav. I think you do not want to engage hard to begin with. Now, the rules do say, don't despair as the Normans if your army is wiped out in the first couple turns. You may still have a chance. Don't just reset it up and start over. I'm not going to. This is the second time I've played, but last time I was playing just the Saxons. I was playing in an opposed game, and I have the feeling that there's a trick to the Norman attack, the initial attack. And maybe you make it very sporadic, very limited. Maybe you do every other hex. I'm not sure. But the problem is you're not going to gain anything unless you have a couple units together attacking in each location. And what we saw is, boom, here come the Saxons flying off the hill. Now, when I played the Saxons, I think I didn't swing back. I think I chose, to a large extent, to just hold my position and try to recover it. But this is the results of not doing that, which is rather extreme. The problems I'm facing right now is I still don't have my cavalry. If I had my cavalry, I could ride in and do quite a bit of damage to those Saxons. And, you know, because they came down off the hill. But I feel like I wasted... I took a turn that I shouldn't have taken, losing all of these. And the reaction being, hey, look, now I can come in. Now, when Roger was playing against me, he was probably much more cautious with the Normans and didn't see this kind of, hey, I'm going to bust the line. Well, I better soften it up first. He had played it before and had some idea of how to deal with the Normans, how to use them properly. I do not. I'm left with really a single attack with the best hopes of just trying to disrupt this line a little bit. Yes, I could have pulled back, but if I do so, the Saxons can pull back completely, and I've done nothing to them whatsoever at the loss of my whole army, basically. Saxons, well, most of the Norman archers have ended up out of ammo, other than the couple that were killed. There was really no bonuses for the Normans here. And now the Saxon line gets to come back and smack back. Turns, things look damn bleak for the Normans. See if any level of care and cleverness can help us here. I'm not using my most advantageous forces, which have the papal banner here. I'm saving them in reserve. Let's pull this back. And I'm launching attacks on the two flanks. This one because they're a little scattered on here. This one because I started moving here first. But actually I think this makes sense because if one flank or the other is successful, then I can commit my reserve. This is a game in which I think that reserves can actually play a better role than they often do in war games. And we'll see if I can make up for these huge losses I took on the infantry, which the answer is probably not, because the problem is I have to have my units in line so that I can do double hits on single units. just in case something good happens. Use a cav charge here. I did launch the cav there. With the flank attack, I didn't feel like I needed the charge. I kind of forgot about it too. And, you know, we're beginning to get a couple pickoffs. We did kill one of the Saxon leaders, though, and that's kind of a big deal. But other than that, I don't see anything too exciting going on. Saxons not being tricked into pulling off the hill or anything like that, or force their way forward. Now, of course, they might end up having to pursue, but that's only en route, it's not destruction, so we'll see what they can do coming down. The Saxons ended up actually charging off the hill with an impetuous charge and getting some more kills in, and it's just not looking like the Normans have an easy chance here. I could take a recovery turn, but then these run off the map before. If I take the pause in battle, it's not like I'm really locked into combat in a lot of places that I feel like I need to be. I might be able to make some kind of breakthrough and headway here, and who knows? Maybe I can catch Harold and shoot him in the eye or something. Routing is pretty much forever, so Eustace's cav ran off the map. He's got basically one cav left in the game. William's still got a fair-sized force of cav left, and my Bretons over here are trying their best to beat into the Saxon line here. I'm going to make an attack just because, you know, getting a kill is helpful. Norman success up here. The only problem is there's a lot of exposed flanks. The Saxons could well repulse that, but we'll see what happens because they might be forced to go chase routing units or do something equally awful. It's set up to try to destroy the Normans here and then pick off another, the last of the Franco-Flemish. We push into this turn, we'll throw a Saxon on the line here. We have, well, the Saxons actually destroyed a unit, caused a rout, and came charging after. One unit got killed slamming into this cav. The other one finished off one of the routing cav. But it does kind of break up their line and their positioning. And there's some possibility now for the Norman central cav to maybe make a push in this direction. See how that works. But there's a lot of Normans gone. They're not really able to hold up to attack, so I think the Saxons coming off the hill could easily break them. Attempt to break is not going to be that impressive. We're able to get a few flank shots in, and that's about it. And we brought the papal banner in. Romans have mounted the hill. Again, though, not as much danger as they were before. They were strung out in this horrible line before. At least now they're kind of in a reasonable position. But this unit could get hit, and that could cause this one to rout or something along those lines. So we'll see how the Saxons are able to do something about this. Set up to make a couple of attacks with opportunity, just to try to bury the Normans so deeply under that they can't possibly come back, except by killing Harold by some magical means, since he's hiding here. Wasn't all that impressive. However, it does appear to be sufficient to have kind of blocked off any kind of Norman advance. Of course, we could swing into position and try to get some of these silly flank attacks. I'm really iffy on the flank attack situation because the problem with it is it just feels too fluid. It feels too much like, you know, we're sliding around like a crazy cavalry melee, and I'm always iffy about those from musket and pike or something like that, where you're just flinging around constantly getting enfilade shots on each other. You see the same thing in things like the Napoleon's Art of War, the Last Battles, stuff like that, the old SPI stuff, and it just feels kind of wrong in this day and age. It always felt kind of wrong. It felt kind of silly. I remember when I was playing TSS, and I think I may have mentioned this, we had some of the rules wrong, and, you know, we had units just flying around, getting flank shots on each other using the headquarters units as like expert flank shot accumulators. And the crazy thing with that was you get a lot of firepower and then you got a flank shot to get a column shift or whatever. Here, flank shots are the only thing that kind of works though. So it's like you can't smash into the line and break through it usually. So as we saw, this is the first chance I would have to start using Feint Attacks. I don't like the table for it, man. I have a 1 in 6 chance of losing my cav. A 1 in 6 chance of it routing, which probably means I lose it. It might not, because it's happening during my own turn. I might be able to take advantage of that little factor. And a 2 in 6 chance of killing a third unit. Huskarls, I probably don't want to try this against. Well, I didn't have any really good available charges to me anyway, and I didn't want to do charges either. I guess I could do one here, but I chose not to, and likewise here because I already have an advantage. Now this one maybe was more valuable because I get an additional +2 for the charge, and that's appealing, but I've got numbers on him. I got a good chance of really wailing into him. So I'm kind of holding off on that, and if he's hit, well, if he can't route, so I'm not worried about it. He can't route because he's the one being hit. You can't route the unit you're hitting. So yeah, I mean, maybe that would have been a valuable place to do a charge, because then I disrupt, and I might be able to recover this disruption. All right. And then likewise, I have the opportunity, hey, to maybe throw a couple of javelins and cause problems with the Saxons again. Saxons feel pretty potent. However, maybe this is the time to do that. So I think I'm gonna chuck my javelins at this point. Let me find this. 4, 5, or 6 at any one, so I could smack a couple of these archers, a cav, and I have to do it now rather than at some other point. Now I'm not terribly worried about these guys hurting me. I'm more worried about an outflank causing problems, but I've got so many numbers. Chances are where I really need that defensive bonus, or the bonus of the javelins, I won't be able to have it because I'm getting hit from the flank. Actually, this couldn't even be a charge. I had to turn in order to attack, so no. It's really hard to get a charge off. Norman turn, I make choices not to make a 0 attack going up here. I have nothing to follow up with. However, we did have some successful attacks and killed off a few of the Saxons that we've lured off the hill. They come off the hill, I kill them. They stay on the hill. They seem to be pretty much invulnerable still because they have enough numbers. And on turn 7, we don't see a lot having been done by the Saxons. Their main goal at this point is try to hold this hill as best as they can. Don't launch a lot of counterattacks. I did launch a couple here and there. They didn't work out very well. So we push into turn 8. Like I'm losing ground now with the Normans. They've fallen back off the hill to try to recover, but I'm hoping to give it maybe a push here or here where I can get back up there and get a little bit more at Jay over on the flank. Had something of an opportunity over here, and we didn't get anywhere. But over here, I busted through on these archers. That could have routed these on a 5 or a 6. That would have broken a big hole, which with the shifting of these so that there's room for routers or whatever, could have been a big problem. Unfortunately, they didn't go. But a quick turn like that, you know, could turn this highly, I don't know, sort of puzzly, how can I get my flank attacks without getting screwed type of deployment game into something much, much quicker just on the blink of an eye, where, you know, and I have no problem with a lot of luck in a game. I have a problem with the amount of thinking that I'm putting into where I position my units and everything. Very Avalon Hill Classics type of positioning going on here. That just doesn't seem to suit with the amount of randomness that is potentially available. You know, those old games had a lot of randomness too. You get a 1 in 6 chance of eliminating something. Boom, look, it's gone. Now I've got a hole I can take care of. There's some similarity there. Saxons trying to play it close to the vest, get an attack on here, drive them off the hill, but otherwise try to defend that hill line. Now, there are enough Saxons, like the break that could have happened here, a couple of hits, that could send the whole line fleeing. It could be the end all at once. I'm playing cautiously. I took this attack. I can probably get hit from the flank with this unit, which is going to happen. But I don't make the attacks here at 0, which could have destroyed this, but they could also destroy one of these and send my whole line flying. Don't want to chance that. It's just not worth it. And I only got 1 archer left. I don't know why this guy stayed in the line here. It was probably a mistake. I hope I didn't move him up there, because that would have been a real mistake. And here the Normans come again. Again, no real reason that I see for trying to do a pause, except maybe to get these archers back. But you know, they're so ineffective, at least until they can start disrupting. Disrupting the fur doesn't do anything either. Killing archers is good. Other units, they only have a 1 in 6. They have a 2 in 6 chance of disarming. It just doesn't seem like even that many units trying to bring them back is terribly useful. And at least those units can't be killed. Which reminds me of, you know, thoughts like in GBOH, one of the worst things, the skirmishers. Well, if I put them behind my line, at least they won't cost me anything. And maybe they can serve some purpose later in the game. Well, here, maybe these will serve something. But right now, they're better off the board than on. You know, I mean, I could go run away and hide them with Eustace, but they come on more cleanly if I take the pause. So hiding them doesn't seem like a good purpose to bring them onto the board. They're not costing me anything right now. And the Normans have made a little bit of an advance here, a little bit of disruption there. They killed a couple of units. They started one routing, which of course is another death. Still can't route the Housecarls. I need a 5 or a 6 to do that. That would have been 2 more units off the board. This game and this system can swing so mightily. And here's the thing. Generally, it only happens when you're attacking. Like, the defender is the one who breaks. Okay, that kind of maybe makes some sense, but the point is that it's very hard to hold a line. So the Normans, by being the attackers, have something of an advantage built into the system. Even after getting wiped out here, it's still in doubt. They could still cause an entire collapse of the Saxon line if there's enough time left for them to make enough attacks. As long as there's a solid line, though, I can only peel off a couple of units at a time with attacks. And now we go to the Saxon turn. We got some reinforcements coming in. And, of course, pretty much the first thing that happens is this just runs off the map. Nothing I can do about it. Please don't look at these. The map has obviously got some glare, some gloss to it. But the counters are also glossy. And for whatever reason, anytime I'm trying to deal with a stack of counters, that's why you saw that spill there. Glossy counters just fall more easily, and when you try to grab a stack of them or something, like over there where I've got them collected, to pick them up, one squirt out and hit all over the map. So it's one of the things I have against glossy counters. It seems to be kind of a, you can't help but have glossy counters these days. Nobody uses matte counters anymore. I don't know if that's a, you know, if it's just so much cheaper to use gloss, or if there's actually a developmental decision of everybody's used to glossy counters, we're using them. I still hate them. And these are like the ones from the late 80s, early 90s, particularly problematic. When you got larger counters, I don't know, some of the GMT counters and stuff, they don't seem to shoot off and cause as much stacking problems, even though they have a little bit of gloss on them. trying to hit back and deliberately trying to leave holes in their line because this system is so damaging. I can move into this hex and I can't get here. That seems a little odd to me, that a hole in the line can't be exploited at all. It just doesn't fit my concept of what, you know, this sort of tactical swords and shield type fighting is about. But the truth is, as long as I leave those holes, my line is actually more solid, less likely to rout. I'm less worried about these. These are harder to beat up on. But the point is, I can't get the flank attack, so these aren't weak. And putting a 3-point unit in here weakens the whole line. I can kind of understand that part of it, that weak unit weakens the line. Because what it means is these guys aren't covering as much line. But if I had all solid units in there, the line would still be weaker than it is by going every other unit. This is actually weaker than this would be, you know. Not that I could actually be set up that way, but that's something that just troubles me about the system. And at the end of another turn, well, we managed to kill off a couple more Norman Cav, and that sent units that were too close running. You kind of need to put units too close in order to launch an attack. So there's always that danger. So now I'm playing this weird little game, trying to ping-pong my way just to make sure that the Normans don't get up and get a 1 in 6 shot at Harold or something like that, where they could just win the game off of that. Now, obviously, I could be taking cracks at William as well, but I don't feel like I need to take those risky maneuvers, right? My Saxons are doing pretty well on the points, I think. All right. That's actually probably what I like most about this one as compared to the Stamford Bridge one. The Stamford Bridge, man, it just, both sides want chaos because they want to do the most damage possible. And they don't want their lines to be solid. Here, the Saxon position is not a symmetrical mirror of the Norman position. I could come off the hill and turn it into one, and maybe, you know, I'd be in as good or better a position than I am trying to defend. But at least I have some different objectives. I want to make sure that the Normans don't get up here, and a big chaotic situation makes it easier for them to get onto Senlac Hill and get a bunch of victory points from that. And I have a terrain advantage. I have certain other edges that prevent me from really kind of wanting to engage in the swirling chaos and see if I can just completely eliminate the Norman army, which maybe I could do, you know? I mean, I could come down here. This guy's gone. Actually, he might survive. Odo could come over and save him, which is kind of impressive. Or he might just rally. And this guy might survive too. It's because of the marshes. For some reason, marshes make it easier to recover. Again, not really believable. If a routing force moves into a marsh, I don't think that really becomes a rallying position for them. I don't know, maybe, you know, ew, I'm getting water in my boots. I'd rather not keep running. I have no argument for why this might be a valid, why these might be a valid rallying point and defense to help the Normans not leave the map. But yeah, I mean, just the simple fact that this presents a somewhat asymmetrical position where your decisions are not mirrors of each other makes this a somewhat more interesting game. I still don't buy it, though. I don't believe what it's doing. And, you know, you could do some hand-waving. Say, yeah, these every other, it's stronger for some magical reason to have less men on the line when their morale is cracking. That's basically what you're saying. Either that or it's stronger to leave holes in your line, which I totally don't believe. But the abstraction could be seen as there are less men on the line. Now, why that would make the morale stronger, why that makes it so that you're immune to routs, I do not have any imaginary argument that I can use for that. Okay, the Normans pushing forward and risking some archers here, pushing the papal banner forward, hoping that they could get a breach. It's kind of interesting. They're going for the best attack they could possibly have, but the most they can rout is this unit with it. If they hit one of these, they could rout a couple of units 2 versus 1 didn't seem like that big a deal. And in fact, this would maybe put us in a safer position. I don't have an easy way to push this attack forward, though. It's just really this sporadic little push over that hill. William's running back to try to rally these guys. Couldn't get all the way in. Odo also is going to do an auto rally there. Got a kill, and that's really it. And now the Saxons might have some opportunities, because whenever you have 2 spaces between units, there's room often to slip through. So this guy could come boom, boom into there. That's how this thing got up there. He was able to go from, I think, here into here, maybe, I don't know. He actually probably cheated, but he could have made the attack from here, so we're okay. Since incurring a little bit of risk, they're coming off the hill in a couple of places to launch some flank attacks, see if they can really kind of take whatever impetus the Normans have left away from them, so that they really can't break onto the hill. Go terribly well for the Saxons. You can see a lot of disorders. This guy's healed. Not a lot of recovery, and really not in that great a position anymore, but the battle's almost over. At this point, the Normans could make a choice to take their break. This is kind of their last chance to do it. Next turn is the last turn. So I got to consider that a little bit more carefully at this point. Let's choose not to. They're going to launch a couple of good attacks, but these aren't ones that can break the Saxon army. The reason they chose not to is the Saxons would get so many recoveries off of it that we basically have no chance of taking the hill. And nothing amazing happened for the Normans. They did kill a unit, and that's really about it. Now the Saxons have their kind of, well, maybe we ought to retreat, but maybe we can get a few more kills and do something cool. I don't know. I like being aggressive, so I'll probably come charging further. Focus is to make a few attacks in the center. Nothing else looks particularly valuable to me. And pretty much an overwhelmingly successful turn for the Saxons. They killed something like 3 Norman cavalry. The Normans have almost nothing available to them, some disrupted units. They've got the possibility of throwing a few units into battle, well, 2, but other than that, there's really nothing going for them. The question is, do they want to chance it? A kill might actually still get them something of value by routing units if it's in the right place, like right here in the meat of their order. They could end up routing a bunch of units with a lucky shot. That may be their best shot. Yeah, I'm gonna take that crack there. Throwing William in too, what the hell. And we have a success, but William rolls a 1 in his first and only combat. Boom, it's over. That saves me the trouble of having to count the points, except I am kind of curious what they come out as, because maybe I'm a little mistaken, but I think that the Norman cav is worth more than the Ferd, or not the Ferd, the no, Norman cav are only worth 4. The housecarls are only worth 3. So yeah, I'm pretty damn sure. And there's a whole lot of cav gone, and not that many housecarls gone. And the Ferd is, you know, cheap. It's like the Norman stuff. They're 2 points each. So yeah, that's the end right there. I'm not even gonna count. That gives me some more time to chatter a little bit, because it's pretty damn obvious. There are more pieces of the Normans dead. They were wiped out very early. You know, obviously, I think my initial frontal assault was the wrong thing to do. It felt like the right thing to do in Stamford Bridge in terms of weakening the enemy, but here, the enemy being on the hill, you kind of want to do something to coax him to come down, but that's hard to do. I mean, you basically have to make, if you're attacking just one unit on one unit, well, first of all, you're at -2 on the attack table, which isn't going to help. But if you can disrupt some units beforehand or whatever, because all the front units are those housecarls, and you're really not going to do much to them. But you could hit one, disorder one of your own units, and then you're at even and you have a chance of killing a unit. If you don't make those attacks, what do? Wait a couple of turns until you have the cav that can fight at almost even odds and try to break through there? Maybe. That's kind of what Roger did to me when we were playing. But he wasn't getting a lot of traction with the Normans either. I just think that there's sort of a... If that is indeed what you should do, if you should not be trying to push any kind of any kind of attack early, in those first couple turns of the game, well, then historically, that action was a bad choice. And should games present you with, the historical actions as reasonable choices, or should they just say, you know what, this is just ridiculous? But then why let somebody, why give them those turns where you'd attack if those are a bad choice to make? It's kind of like a gotcha baked into the game. You're like looking at it and saying, well, I can't think of anything to do except slam all my troops in there and hope for the best and see what happens. Well, maybe the best thing to do is nothing for a couple of turns. I don't know. But if that's the case, then it presents you with a, don't do the historical thing, it's dumb, and B, here you go, do you want to do the historical thing? It looks stupid, but otherwise you're sitting around wasting a couple of turns. And it's not like, wow, this was a complete blowout in the sense of there was no chance for the Normans to win. All along, they had a chance to maybe get up there and kill Harold. He can't do much to get out of the way. You can pretty much hide William, but because Harold's on the receiving end, if you get a breakthrough, you can run up and kill him, for what that's worth. There were things I didn't use. For example, Odo. Odo only rallied one unit. The pause I didn't take. And the Impetuous Saxons didn't happen very much, mainly because the Normans stopped routing. Once you get to a certain point in the game, you're no longer attacking, once you get to the point where you're starting to make flank attacks and stuff, the whole system stops making as much sense as a representation of anything that makes sense at all. I mean, it's just not a realistic system for that. And so once that kind of gamey mechanism starts taking play, the history starts going really crazy. All right, let's zip this one up, and I guess I'll come back with a review of the system.